Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to episode 242 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy, and if you were with us last week, you can tell I feel a lot better. I think I have my regular voice back, and again, my apologies for that last episode. That was tough to do. I was definitely feeling the effects of a cold. I'm still a little stuffed up, but still here, feeling a whole lot better this week. So thanks for all the notes and questions about my health. That's much appreciated. Well, we're glad to have you with us today. We are embarking today on a three-part series that's based on the idea of being comfortable. And today's episode we've titled, Don't Get Comfortable. And we're going to talk about why you shouldn't get comfortable around the bar exam today. In our second of the three-part series, we're going to talk about the idea of what you have to get uncomfortable with when it comes to the bar exam. We'll look at some specifics there. And then we'll wrap up in the third part with what I think you have to be comfortable with in order to be ultimately successful in passing the bar exam. So I hope you'll stick around for all three of these episodes. It's going to take us pretty much through the month of March and into the beginning of the results season in early April. So hope you enjoy it. I'm excited about doing this series with you. Now, if you'd like to watch today's episode on video, you can do that. Just go to celebrationbarreview.com/242. That's the episode number. And you can see the episode and check out all the show notes right there on the page. If you prefer to listen to your podcast, you can do that on Apple iTunes, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, and a lot of other places where podcasts are syndicated. And again, you'll find the show notes there. And we do have our entire archives on our website. Just look at the podcast link at the top of our website, and you can check out all of the episodes going back to our very first ones. So however you'd like to get your episodes, we're glad to accommodate and provide that for you. We're glad you found us, and we're glad that you're here. We also, and I personally very much appreciate the comments and feedback I get from people about these episodes. They really help me know what you want to hear and what's important to you. So thanks for that, and I encourage you to keep those coming. And certainly feel free to rate and review us. Give us your honest rating and review on all those different platforms where the podcast can be found. Now, as we are heading into the month of April, we will be looking at the beginning of the bar exam results season. We'll get a few small jurisdictions in early April, and then in mid-April, April 22nd, I believe it is, Florida will release their results. That's the first really big state in the country that will release results, and that will be a canary in a coal mine, if you will. It'll tell us a lot about what's going on. My expectation is that it was a bad exam generally across the country. I think we'll see a continuation of what we've seen for the last couple of years, which is that results generally will continue to be down. Now, we've bucked that trend for a long time at Celebration Bar Review, and I expect that will happen again. But I think the overall numbers are clearly pointed downward, and I don't see anything that's going to change that right now. I also wanted to comment for just a moment before we jump into today's episode about the ongoing or now newly found cheating scandal around college admissions. Now, while that's a problem in and of itself and a subject for someone else to discuss at much greater length, there is an implication for the bar exam that I think is worth pointing out, and we're going to keep our eyes on this. One of the techniques that was used by the alleged perpetrators of this scam was to request disability and accommodations for testing subjects, and then to use that additional time to cheat the system in a variety of ways, some of which were just straight up someone else taking the exam. The bar examiners are obviously very, very careful about who sits for the exam, who comes in, how it's proctored, and so on. And I'm not aware of many instances, I won't say none, but there are very few instances in which cheating is alleged for a bar exam taker. On the other hand, the whole question of accommodations and extra time has been a very contentious one in the bar for nearly 20 years now. And I'm afraid that what's going to be one result of this scandal, if you will, at the college level is that we're going to see fewer and fewer grants of accommodations for bar takers based on required or requested disability. And I think this is going to have an impact. I think that what's called the tyranny of time testing is going to become an even bigger factor. We're going to keep our eyes on this. We'll see what happens. But I would tell you that if you are planning on requesting a accommodation based on a disability, you should gather your paperwork as soon as possible. You should file as early as possible, and you should be as well documented as you possibly can. I think that what we're going to see is that the bar examiners who've had an aversion to giving accommodations anyway may very well use this opportunity in the greater discourse in the country to tighten down the grants that they make of accommodations and extra time for testing. So it's something I think you want to be aware of. We're going to watch it, and I'm sure we'll do some specific discussion of that at a later point as we begin to get more information. But just wanted to say that to you right now. If you're planning on taking the exam in July 2019 and you haven't filed for accommodations and you want them, you need to get on it right now. And it is not too early to request those accommodations if you're taking the exam in 2020. So make sure that you're paying attention to that and working on it and getting your documentation in line. Now, speaking of the exams coming up in July 2019 and February 2020 and beyond, I want to invite all of you to a special free training that we do. It's called Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. This is a 90-minute program in which I walk you through the 4 steps that successful bar takers have followed for years and years in our program. It's a step-by-step process, and we show it to you. We lay it right out for you, and we also share with you case studies in students' own words of how they use these steps and what it meant for them. And we show you really how you can create a different result on the bar exam. Now, the training has been life-changing for thousands of people, and we encourage you to attend. It's completely free. We're going to offer it on Thursday night at 7 p.m. You do need to register in advance, and to do that, you can go to the show notes here on the video page or the audio page, or you can go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com/webinar. So that's celebrationbarreview.com/webinar. You see it there on your screen if you're watching the video. In any event, check that out. Click sign up. It's totally free. Thursday, 7 p.m. Now, if Thursday at 7 p.m. doesn't work for you, you can always choose the on-demand version and watch the video at the top of the next hour or on a day and time that meets your schedule. It's the same content, and we encourage you to check it out one way or the other. I think you're going to find it incredibly helpful and useful, and I encourage you to join us for Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. All right, well, I'm anxious to get into today's message. As I said, we wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of getting uncomfortable and not getting comfortable, too comfortable with the wrong things. Maybe that's the best way to put it. So don't get comfortable is what I wanted to talk about today. And the thing that got me to thinking about this was that from time to time, I go back through my old Tony Robbins stuff. And I admit I'm a fan of Tony Robbins. I'm a fan of his philosophy of growth and development. And one of the things that he's credited with, probably one of the more famous sayings that's been credited to him, is you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Let me say it again. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. In other words, change doesn't happen when you're comfortable. When you're too comfortable, nothing changes, nothing develops, nothing occurs. Now, about a year or so ago, I did a video about the movie Wonder Woman, where I talked about being comfortable in World War I, in the foxholes, and it was Wonder Woman who was uncomfortable being in that foxhole, and she jumped out and took a risk. And we'll link to that video. It's one of my favorite messages. But you know, there was something about it that really resonated with people, certainly with our students, and they talked about the need to get uncomfortable with their lives and do something different, and that's where things began to change for so many of them. Well, what I want to do today and in the next couple of weeks is to take a deeper dive on this idea of what you should be comfortable and uncomfortable with. Because I think for many people, particularly as they start out their studies, there is this disconnect between their current reality and where they want to be. And there are some things that many people are comfortable with that they shouldn't be, and there's some things that they're uncomfortable with that they probably shouldn't be. I mean, I think we get it backwards most of the time. So today what I want to begin with is by looking at 4 things that you should not be comfortable with when you're starting your bar study. 4 things that I think get in the way of success on the bar. So let's go ahead and just jump into the first one. The first thing that you should not be comfortable with is failure. You say, well, come on, man, that's obvious, but it's not so obvious at all. I have found over the years that there is a certain subset of bar takers who are absolutely comfortable with their failure. It's what Dave Ramsey used to call the stinky diaper approach. You know, it's warm and smelly, but it's mine. Don't you dare change them. And I think for some measure of bar takers, we've got people who are really quite comfortable with their own failure. I'm not saying they like it. I'm not saying that they revel in it, but it is comfortable. It's what they're used to. It's their expectation. Many years ago, I had a student who had taken the bar exam so many times that when she came to me, one of the things she said is, I bake cookies to bring to the proctors for every exam. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, well, I've been there through the exam so many times. I've gotten to know the proctors. They're kind of my friends. And so I bake them cookies. And I said, are you out of your mind? Throw the damn cookies away. I don't want you having cookies. These people are not your friends, okay? They're nice people. They're wonderful people, but they're not your friends. You shouldn't be so comfortable with failure that you look forward to seeing your friends, the proctors, at the bar exam. This is not a reunion of hell fellows well met. It is a test, and you need to be uncomfortable that it would be going on that way. And yet, people take this idea, well, failure, that's what I expect. And so I'll just be okay with it. No, you won't. I don't want a student coming to me who says, I'm okay with having failed the exam X number of times. I want somebody who's really mad, somebody who's pissed off about it, somebody who's angry enough about their circumstance that they're willing to do something different. But I find that there are people out there who've simply been beaten into submission, not because they don't want to pass or not because it doesn't mean something to them, but it's safer to expect failure than to take the risk of expecting success and then being disappointed. There's something about our non-conscious brain and its ability to protect the id and the ego that says, it's more important to be right internally than to be successful. So if I don't believe I'm going to pass the exam, my non-conscious says, okay, it's important that you not be psychotic. It's important that your expectations be met. And so if that's your belief, we're going to make sure that that's what actually occurs. And therefore, you'll be right even though you failed the exam. And that being right, even though it's a bad result, is actually a stronger pull for some people than the willingness to take a risk. And so what happens is that we protect ourselves against the perceived or the inevitable failure that we know is coming. And so we don't really step out. We have low expectations of ourselves. We have low expectations for the process. I liken it to the Eeyore approach to studying. Oh, I suppose I'll study. It won't make a difference because I never pass anyway. Oh, well, right? I mean, really? Is that really the person you want to be handling your legal affairs? I don't think so. Is it the person you even want to be around? I don't think so. Is it the person I want to be teaching? Absolutely not. I would much rather have Tigger to stay in the Winnie the Pooh world. I'd much rather have Tigger bouncing around saying, oh boy, I'm so excited. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. That person is much more effective and much more capable of moving forward than the person who's seen it all, heard it all, and knows it all. That person is really a drag to work with. They're really hard to help because they're so convinced in their own mind that they can't be successful. They've become comfortable with failure. Well, I can't possibly pass because, there's all these things that happen to me. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But they get into this mode of failure as being acceptable. It's okay. I'll just keep doing it. I didn't have anything better to do for the next couple of months. And they just repeat the motions time after time after time. So what changes for those people? Well, eventually they get sick of being failures. They get tired of going through the same routine. And one of two things happens. They either quit or they get mad enough, angry enough, fired up enough to change their circumstance. Either way, something has to change. You cannot live with repeated, consistent failure. Have you ever been around somebody who's just beaten? They're just beaten down in every part of their life. There's no thing that's good. There's nothing to live for. There's nothing to be excited about. We think of those people as being clinically depressed. And we know that that is not the normal way for human beings to function. And yet I see people that function in just exactly that form all the time around the bar exam. Oh, I've taken the bar a lot of times. It just never really changes. I never quite get over that number. And, I'm just going to go back and do it again. But, I don't want to spend any money or make any real effort or take any real risk because, well, we all know what the result is. Now, I wish people were that clear in what they say. They rarely say it quite that directly, but that's exactly what they mean. And you can see it in the way the behavior occurs. And so if you're sitting there today saying, well, this is interesting, but he doesn't understand. I'll never pass. Oh, yeah, I understand. You'll never pass until you change your mind about it. You'll never pass as long as you accept failure as being something that's an acceptable outcome. It's not a sin to fail. It's not a failing of you as a person. It's just a result on a test. But as long as you accept that as being an okay outcome all the time, well, it's hard to change it. If I'm okay with the results that I'm getting, there's not much of a reason to take a risk to make something different happen. So what should you not be comfortable with? Well, number one, you should not be comfortable with failure. I want failure to make you mad. I want failure to make you inspired. I want failure to be the thing that gets you up in the morning and drives your engine. I want failure to be the thing that you simply refuse to accept. And if you can't get yourself there yet, you need to set that as a goal, and you need to start being conscious about what you're doing. And every time you start the failure is an okay result, you got to stop yourself. Now, the second thing that you shouldn't be comfortable with really ties into this, and it's the idea of being a victim. You see, when we tell ourselves that failure is an okay outcome, it's an acceptable result or an expected result, we're also buying into a victimization. Now, look, I get it. It's easy to feel like a victim when bar pass rates are going down, when people are saying roundly and widely that bar takers are worse than they were before, that people are stupid, that there aren't enough jobs out there, that the system is stacked against you, and that no one wants you in. It's easy to feel that way and to feel like a victim when you went to a law school that clearly can't get most of its graduates into the bar. It's easy to feel like a victim when you've spent tens of thousands or 100,000 or hundreds of thousands of dollars and you can't get through the bar exam. No one's denying your right to feel victimized by that. The difference here is what you do with respect to that victimization. You see, it's way too easy to say, it's not my fault. It's the system of the bar exam. It's the system of the law schools. It's the system of the big box bar reviews. They're all responsible for my outcome. I hate to tell you this. There's only one person responsible for the outcome for you, and that's you. And while other people can help you, while your school can help you, while your bar review can help you, while other entities and circumstances and tools and skills can be brought to bear, ultimately, it's up to you to put them out there. We use some tools at Celebration Bar Review that are extraordinarily effective. You've heard me talk about PhotoReading and Paraliminals and meditation. These tools work. They're very, very effective. But I have students who say, oh no, I couldn't do that. It just wouldn't work for me. Well, how do you know? Well, I just know because I'm not going to be successful anyway. Really? So you're going to stand there trying to do something that's already difficult, that's taking you, let's say, 10 or 15 hours to read an outline, and I tell you you can read it in 15 minutes with 70% comprehension, but you don't want to use that tool? Well, no, because it certainly couldn't work because you don't know how hard it's been for me. Really? I think I do. And I think if I'm giving you a tool that could make it easier, you'd want to try it. But you see, we get into this victimization role, and then nobody can help us. Nobody can do anything for us because we're victims. You know, once you take on that victimization, you give up all your power. One of the things that's most obvious is that when people fight back against being victims, the first thing they do is to reclaim their power. Whatever that power is in whatever part of that world or their life is there, by saying, I am no longer a victim, you claim your power. We've seen that in the Me Too movement. We've seen it in societal movements. We see it all the time. When people start claiming their power, they stop being victims. But you know, we need a Me Too movement for the bar exam. We need people to stop feeling like they're victims of the system. Yeah, the bar exam is hard. Yeah, most people fail the bar exam. Yeah, the system is rigged and tough. So what? So what? You still have to take the test in order to practice law. There's no way around that. So go take the test and pass it. You're capable of doing that. But if you take the victimization approach that says, I just didn't learn enough in law school, I'm not smart enough, no one understands, no one will be able to help me. Well, I think the outcome is pretty well determined, don't you? It doesn't seem like anyone could help you, even if they're standing right there saying, hey, can I help? You know, it reminds me of the story that's told often, I think usually in churches, about the man who is struggling. He's in a flood, and he gets up on his roof, and he says, I'm going to pray to God to save me from this flood. And while he's praying, a man comes along in a boat and says, hey, buddy, let me give you a ride off of the roof. And the guy says, no, I'm waiting for God to save me. Guy goes away. A few minutes later, a guy comes by in a big speedboat. He says, hey, let me help you. Come off the roof. I'll help you out. And the guy says, no, I'm praying to God to help me. And then a helicopter flies over him. And the helicopter guy looks down. The National Guard guy says, hey, let me lift you up to safety. He says, no. I'm waiting for God to come and save me. And of course, the waters are rising. And finally, the man drowns. And when he gets to heaven, he gets to the pearly gates, and he says, God, why didn't you help me? And God says, I sent you a boat, I sent you a rowboat. I sent you a speedboat. I sent you a helicopter. What were you doing? Well, the story is told better by other people, but you get the idea that what happens is when we think of ourselves as victims, when we are unwilling to take responsibility for our own actions, then no matter what help comes our way, we're simply not taking advantage of it. So when I offer students a chance to see their scores increase by using a different approach, and they say, oh, I don't think I could do that. That's too risky. Too risky compared to what? To failing again? Well, I guess so. I guess it means taking a risk and putting yourself out there that might work. But if it didn't work, are you any worse off than you were before? I don't think so. And it's interesting to me that this victimization has become more and more popular as we've gone along. When I started in the bar exam 30 years ago, I don't think most law students saw themselves as victims. They saw themselves as having an opportunity to grow, a career opportunity, and a lot of things going on in their lives and in their professions. Today, I would say it's almost flipped. I think more people coming out of law school, more people in the profession of law, feel like they are victims of something instead of feeling like they are the beneficiaries of an opportunity. So I think you should not be comfortable with being a victim. I think it should make you very uncomfortable, and you should fight to take back your power and your control. Now, the third thing that I think you should not be comfortable with are excuses. Yeah, I'm just going to say it. I think a lot of bar takers are really good at making excuses. You know, it's not just being a victim, but it's excuses. Even the people that would never claim that they're victimized would say things like, I don't have enough time to study, or I don't have enough money to prepare properly, or I don't have enough ability to be successful. Look, at its core, all of these statements are really nothing other than excuses. Let's take the one about not enough time, because it comes up the most often, I think. People say, I just don't have time to be successful. Well, look at your calendar. Everything on the calendar was there because of your choice. You chose to take the job. You chose to take the opportunities and the events. You chose to have children that you're helping and getting them to their particular events. You chose the social events. You chose what you're going to watch on TV. You chose what you're doing with your calendar. You can choose to study for the bar just as well. You see, when people say they don't have enough time, what they're saying is, I don't want to make the choice. It's not a high enough priority to me to give the time that I need to give to make this a success. And what happens if I put in the time and I'm unsuccessful? What does that do to me? What does that do to my ego? Well, I think it's a problem at that point. And so I think that there's a part of this where we have to recognize that when we say, I don't have enough time, we're often saying it's just an excuse. It's just a reason to not put ourselves out there. Do you have 10 or 15 hours a week you could devote to your studies? Well, in my experience, almost everyone does. And so if you start early enough, in our course, you can keep your studies at 5, 10, 15 hours a week, almost entirely through the length of your study. Now, who can't do that? Well, the people that wait until 6 or 7 weeks before the exam. But why would that happen? Well, because you made a choice to put yourself in that box. And now you've got the excuse of, I don't have enough time. No. That was your choice. And you can choose to take a later bar exam from when you start and still go back to that 5 or 10 or 15 hours. But you know, I've also seen people that start at 6 or 7 weeks and they say, I'm going to clear the decks. I'll simply make enough time. I'll do what I have to do. And I respect that person a whole lot more than the one that comes to me at 7 weeks and says, well, you know, I've got to take this next bar exam, but I just don't have enough time to study. Well, who makes that choice? You do. You know, there's nothing stopping you from going to your employer and saying, I need some time off, or I need to take a few days off. I've had people walk into their employers and quit because they've made the decision that they need to have enough time to study. And then I've had people who say, oh, you know, 10 hours a week, that would be a real burden on me. Really? I don't think so. I notice I'm saying really a lot here, but you get the idea. I just don't think that that's really a problem for most people. It's an excuse, isn't it? And we're not very good at acknowledging those excuses sometimes. I also have to say the excuse about not having enough money drives me nuts. Celebration Bar Review has been in this business for 25 years. We have seen a lot of things come and go in the bar review industry, and I am well aware of the fact that bar review companies charge, in general, a lot of money, but we do not. We have a very successful course that's available for $3.20 a day. That's it. Now, when somebody tells me I don't have enough money to pay for a bar review course, I'm absolutely flabbergasted, because if you don't have $3.20 a day worth of investment, you have no chance of passing this exam. Now, I know that there are people out there that say, well, I'll just borrow materials, or I'll get a free book, or there's even now a company that says they're going to offer a free bar review, whatever that means. The reality is, if you're not invested, if you don't have skin in the game, then the odds of you being successful are very, very limited. If you're a bar repeater and you say, well, I already spent all my money with Barbie or Kaplan or Themis, well, tough. Spend the money you need to get the results you need, but don't just stop. Don't say, well, I'm done. I'm not going to invest anymore. It makes no sense at all. Think about the investment you've got in your law degree. Think about the investment that you've got in lost wages and opportunity. It's huge. We talk about in our webinar that it probably amounts on average to over $160,000 for most bar repeaters every time they sit down at the exam. Would you protect that investment for $3.20 a day? It's really a no-brainer. So why do people say I don't have enough money? It's an excuse. You see, if they were guaranteed, absolutely had zero risk of failure, if we had that back door or side door that the college guys do that were illegal, and we could say you absolutely would pass, well, sure, I'd pay $3.20 a day to absolutely pass the bar exam, no question about it. But because it's not an absolute guarantee, we then start making the excuse that we don't have enough money, and that's all it is. It's just an excuse. If you don't have $97 a month to spend on studying for the bar, you're in no position to take the exam, and you should wait until you've got some money in the bank. But the truth is, you're not going to pass the character and fitness check if your bank account is at zero all the time. And so when I hear that I don't have enough money, that's really nothing other than an excuse, and it's one you should not be comfortable with. And then I said the third excuse was I don't have enough ability. Oh, I hate this. I hate the people that say to me, well, I'm just not smart enough, or I'm not talented enough, or I don't understand torts, or I can't do UCC Article 9, or I'm just no good with multiple choice questions. We tell ourselves these amazing lies all the time. We have no basis in reality for them. It's really made up on a very small sample size. Oh, one time I didn't do well on one question on one subject, therefore I'm no good at it at all. Or I'm no good at torts, even though the whole subject of torts I'm probably pretty good at, but maybe there's one part of it I'm not so strong in. You see, we generalize from the very small sample size to the large general statement and then say, well, I'm no good at all of this. That's not true. It's an excuse. And it's an excuse that protects us from learning. Well, you see, I can never really learn the rule against perpetuities. Well, that might be true, but you can learn something about it. You can get smarter on it. You can get better at it if you put yourself to it. But if you say, oh, I can't do property law, well, then how easy is that? We just give up right there. And I see students give up on subjects all the time. I see them give up on essay writing. I see them give up on multiple choice test taking. Why? Because they've become comfortable with the idea that they're not smart enough. Look, I don't know how anybody gets that into their mind that's been through law school. You were smart enough to get into college and to get out. You were smart enough to get into law school and to get out. You're smart enough. There is no one that's been through that process that is not intelligent enough to pass the bar. That's not the problem. The problem is you don't believe you're smart enough, and so you're giving up instead of pushing through. I know that sounds like a lot of tough love here, or maybe it just sounds like being tough. But the point is that someone has to push that kind of student past what they believe and what excuses they're making. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough ability. No, that's not true. None of those statements are true. You have plenty of time. You have plenty of money. You have plenty of ability. You're just not choosing to use them. And then the fourth of our items that you should not be comfortable with. You should not be comfortable following others. And here's what I mean by that. It is very easy in a conservative profession like law to just follow the crowd, to do what everybody else does. I see this all the time when it comes to bar reviews. You know, I call them the big box bar reviews because you get a big box and nothing else. And people blindly fall into that trap of saying, I'm going to get the big box 7 weeks before the bar exam, and I'm going to take that and, well, that'll work. Why? On what basis do you do that? Well, I did it because my friends who haven't taken the bar yet told me that I should do it so that they could get a free bar review course. That's a brilliant reason for doing it. Why else do you do it? Well, because I see the big box bar review name on everything in my law school. Why? Because they spend millions of dollars at my law school ingratiating themselves into the daily operations. They pay for professors, they pay for rooms, they pay for parties. Why wouldn't I? Well, maybe because it has absolutely nothing to do with passing the bar. Well, I'm going to do it because everybody takes them. Yeah, have you looked at the statistics lately? That everybody that takes them statistic is a two-edged sword. Because you see, when we take all the people that take the bar exam, not just the first-time takers, we see more people failing than passing. Well, how can that be? If everyone's taking this course and it's such a great course, how is it that everyone is not passing? Well, it's because that's not really their purpose. They are simply the providers of information. And if you're following the crowd because you're comfortable with just following the crowd, then you're putting your fate and your future in the hands of something that just doesn't make any sense at all. You know, I appreciate when people contact me to talk about our course. They don't always choose us, to be sure, but at least they're doing their homework. They're doing the due diligence to find out if there's something else out there. And I appreciate those people who are willing to say, you know what, there's something that just doesn't strike me as being right or best about these big box courses. They don't really seem to offer much in the way of assistance. They just drop information on us. I don't hear people raving about how much they love them. I mean, we talked in one of our earlier podcasts about terms that people search on Google, and one of the most common is fill in the name of your big box bar review, failed the bar exam. It's a common phrase. Why? Because that's what happens. People take the course and they fail. And yet, year after year, 3Ls, 4Ls come out and they say, I'm going to do what everybody else does. I'm just going to follow the crowd. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with following the crowd, but you shouldn't be comfortable with it. You should only do it if it makes sense for you. If you have a non-traditional structure in your life, maybe you're working or you've got a family or you've got other obligations, maybe a 7-week course doesn't make sense. Maybe if you need more personalized assistance, a big box course doesn't make sense. Maybe if you're not interested in memorization and flashcards and recitation of elements and IRAC writing, a big box course doesn't make sense. But if you're comfortable only with the idea of following the crowd, well, you would never want to take a risk like that and do something, even if it has a greater probability of success, because it's different than what the crowd is doing. And so what happens is that we default to not taking risks, even when there's the possibility of a better result, because, well, it's a risk. And we're so comfortable with not taking risks, even when we know the results aren't good, that we'd rather be comfortable and not risk takers, even when we know the bad result is coming. It doesn't make any sense, does it? And yet you see it over and over and over again. People following the crowd, the lemmings right over the edge of the cliff. And that's what we see year after year, exam after exam. Unfortunately, a lot of those people end up bruised and battered, and they come to us for help, and we're glad to offer it then. But you know, the truth is we could have avoided a lot of that pain if you just simply checked it out earlier. And look, if you come and you check us out and you say, yeah, not for me, that's okay. I'm a big boy. I can live with that. We got plenty of people that want to be in our courses. We sell out every exam date, but at least you're starting the process of thinking critically about what it's going to take for you to be successful. What scares me are the people that never ask that question. They just do what everybody else is doing because, well, that's what everyone does. And I signed up as a 1L and put my $50 down. And so that must mean it was a good decision. In what world would that be true? Only in the world of law school 1Ls, right? And so it's a great business model for the big box bar reviews. It's a terrible, terrible way to prepare and study and ultimately to pass the exam. And it's the dirty little secret that everyone knows, but not so many people are willing to talk about. So what should you not be comfortable with? Well, you shouldn't be comfortable with failure. You shouldn't be comfortable with being a victim. You shouldn't be comfortable with making excuses. And you shouldn't be comfortable following what other people do. That's a pretty good list of things to not be comfortable with. And in our next episode, we're going to talk about what you need to get uncomfortable with as the next step in this process. And then we'll wrap up by talking about there are 3 things that I think you have to be comfortable with in order to be successful ultimately on the test. I hope this is interesting and helpful for you. I'm glad to have you with us today. Thanks for checking this out and checking us out. Look forward to good results for you as you move through your study process. Now, that's our episode for today. I want to remind you before we sign off that our free training is Thursday at 7 p.m. It's called Do Something Different. How about that? Make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Thursday, 7 p.m. You can sign up on the show notes here or by going to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar. So again, thanks everybody. Good to have you with us. Have a great week, and we'll be back to you again next week along the Extra Mile. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.